What's up, Timmons here. Here is my throwback segment where I talk about the films that turns 10, 20, 30, and 40 this week. And we got some interesting ones here. Turning 10 this week, we got the first Goosebumps movie. Now, Goosebumps, of course, stars Jack Black as a fictionalized version of R.L. Stein, who teams up with his neighbor, played by Dylan Minnette, and his daughter, played by Odetta Rush, to save a hometown from like a monsters here. And of course, you got the famed dog Slappy. This is a really good one. I've always really quite liked that original Goosebumps movie. It was fun, entertaining. Oh, Slappy, was who by the way was also voiced by Jack Black. I really quite like the Slappy character. It's a really cool one. The sequel is probably not as good as the first, but I still quite enjoy the sequel too. So it'll be cool seeing a third Goosebumps with Jack Black. But all right, also turning 10, we of course got his new film Frankenstein coming out. But 10 years ago, this week, we already had another Guillermo del Toro movie, and that was Crimson Peak. And this is actually one of the few Guillermo del Toro movies I was not a fan of. It actually has its fans, believe it or not, but every good director has a bad day in the office, and to me, this is probably to be honest, this is probably his worst film, in my opinion. It wasn't all that scary, pretty forgettable. I mean, if you guys don't know much about the story, it is set in in England and follows an aspiring author who travels to a romance gothic mansion in Cumberland, England, with like her new husband and sister. There, she of course must depict her like the mystery behind a ghostly vision of her haunted new home. And yeah, I really wasn't all that big with this one. Again, it was pretty boring at times. Didn't really follow it true. I mean, you had a good cast like Mia Wasikowska, Tom Hiddleston, Jessica Chastain, Charlie Hunnam, but the movie itself wasn't all that great in my opinion. All right, also turning 10 is Crimson. Oh, I already said Crimson Peak. Well, also turning 10 is Bridge of Spies, which is of course directed by Steven Spielberg. Not my favorite Spielberg film, but it's actually an okay one. This of course stars Tom Hanks, Mark Rylance, who actually won an Oscar for this one. He actually beat out Sylvester Stallone for his Oscar here. This is of course set during Cold War and tells the story of lawyer James B. Donovan, who is entrusted with negotiating the release of Francis Gary Powers, a convicted Central Intelligence Agency pilot who's like U2 spy plans was shot over the Soviet Union in 1960. And of course, Mark Rylance, I really still thought he was great here. I think Sylvester Stallone should have won his Oscar that year. I had no complaint about Mark Rylance winning because he was excellent. Alan Alda was great in this. It's a really good one, just not like Spielberg's better films here. Alright, also turning 10 is Woodlawn, which was from the faith-based company Perfects. Where a gifted high school football player must learn to embrace his talent and his faith as he battles racial tensions on and off the fields. This would have been released by Agent Studios if it was released today. But anyway. This stars the likes of Sean Astin, Jon Voight. It was actually, faith-based movies could be a hit and miss once in a while. This is one of the better faith-based movies I've seen in the past number of years. It is really inspirational. It is really endearing. Sean Astin's great. I mean, it's actually not a bad film there. Alright, also turning 10. Of course, we just lost Robert Redford this past year. And 10 years ago this week, we had him playing the role of Dan Rather in Truth. Now, this, of course, stars the likes of Cate Blanchett, Robert Redford, and it focuses on Mary Maples controversy, the resolving the last days of news anchor Dan Rather and producer Mary Mapes at CBS Studios. And it's a really good film, from Sony Classics. Cate Blanchett, Robert Redford was really good in this one. It's a really decent, film about journalism, and Redford really embodied Dan Rather perfectly. All right, also turning 10 is a film that won Brie Larson her first Oscar, and that is Room. Now, Room, of course, stars Brie Larson as a young woman who has been captive for 7 years and who's like 5-year old son played by Jacob Tremblay, was born in captivity here. And Room is excellent. To me, it's probably the best movie that came out in 2025, in 2015. Brie Larson. Every time people talk smack about Brie Larson, I just always bring back Room. She is excellent in Room. The one that really put Jacob Tremblay on the map. He actually won a Critics' Choice Award. I really think he should have got an Oscar nomination, but it's usually rare for kid actors to really get an Oscar sometimes. But I mean, I really thought he was great here. You also had like William H Macy, Joan Allen. Room is a really good one. Really intense at times. Great performances by Lawson, Tremblay. It's such a good one if you guys ever seen that. Also, turning 10, we have Beast of No Nation, which I can say was one of the earliest Netflix movies to come out. This, of course, was directed by Kerry Fukunaga, starring Idris Elba, and sort of follows like this young kid who becomes a child soldier as his country experiences a horrific civil war. It's an okay film. I mean, it's not like one of Netflix's best, nothing like that. It did score a couple award recognitions, but that's really it. All right, films turning 20 this week. We got Domino. Now, this was directed by the late great Tony Scott, starring Keira Knightley, Mickey Rourke, Edgar Ramirez, Mina Suvari, Monique, Chris Walken, and the film is it's about like this fashion model turned bounty hunter who narrates how like 10 million robbery came out 36 hours before here, and the movie is a lot of fun. Like Keira Knightley. This was like Keira Knightley as you never really saw her before. She was really fierce in this one. Mickey Rourke was great. Edgar Ramirez. It's such a really good one. It is really entertaining, to say the least. It's really fun there. All right. Also turning 20 is the Cameron Crowe film Elizabethtown. Maybe one of like Cameron Crowe's not so good ones. Although his worst was probably Aloha, but this is definitely his other worst. The film, of course, stars the likes of Orlando Bloom, Alec Baldwin, Kristen Dunst, Susan Sarandon, and follows a young shoe designer, Drew Baylor, who is far from his job after costing his company and the industry a record of nearly $1 billion, and on the verge of taking his own life. He receives a call from his sister telling him that her father passed, and he ends up having a romance with Kristen Dunst's character. It's not really that good. I mean, I was probably one of the few rom coms I was never a fan of. I mean, it's such a shame too because Cameron Crowe is the director behind, Say Anything, Almost Famous, and I do hope we see him out of director's jail soon. But who knows? This is definitely one of his not so good ones. To be honest, this and Aloha is like his worst done. Hey, every good director has a bad day in the office, Alright, also turning 20 is the remake of The Fog. Now, this one also stars Tom Welling, who, if I'm not mistaken, at the time was coming off of, the TV show Smallville. And here, of course, this is a remake of the John Carpenter film from the 1980s. You also got, like, Selma Blair, Maggie Grace, and it's a story of a strange fog that sweeps in over the island coast here, bringing its like vengeful spirits of manners who were murdered their 134 years here. And it's actually not that bad of a film. I mean, it's not great, but it definitely has its moments here. Tom Welling, obviously, this was trying to make him a star, Smallville, which became a hit at the time. And he was actually pretty cool in this. Maggie Grace was really good. It's not bad. It's not really a bad remake here. All right. Also turning 20, we got 9 Lives. Not to be confused with that cat movie that Kevin Spacey did, or that Paris Hilton horror film. But this movie here was directed by Albert Nobbs' director Rodrigo Garcia, starring a very young Dakota Fanning, Robin Wright, Glenn Close, Sissy Spacek, Holly Hunter, Amanda Seyfried, and we're captives of the very relationship that defines the Sussein and 9 women meet the travails and disappointments of life. It is a really decent independent film. Great performances by the female leads. Jason Isaacs is good. Not a bad film there. Also turning 20 is The World's Fastest Indian, which stars Anthony Hopkins, who plays like racer Burt Monroe and his highly modified 1920 Indian Scout motorcycle. And it's a really decent, decent inspiration film directed by the great Roger Donaldson, who did Dante's Peak. Anthony Hopkins was great in this. He, of course, produced this one. And it's a really good film, a good performance by Hopkins, and well worth watch there. All right. Now, films turning 30 this week. We got the film Jade, which stars David Caruso. You also do got the likes of Linda Fortino, who you don't see her anymore. Like, remember she was in stuff like she was in Dogma. She was in Man in Black. Like, you don't really see her hardly anymore nowadays. That's unfortunate there. I'm sad that she fell off the map, but this is where like an art dealer is found killed, and the man's death leads to a intriguing investigation. And this is, of course, like very risque at times. It is, of course, very erotic. Linda's, looks great in this one. Michael Bean's in this. Chaz Palminteri, directed by the Exorcist director William Friedkin. It is a really good film. That's well worth watch there. Also turning dirty is the Scarlet Letter. Obviously, based on the story, the Knights of Hawthorne story, starring Demi Moore. Where, like, after a widow, played by Moore, has a child and refuses to name the father, a community forces her to wear the letter A here. And frankly, I think the best adaptation of the Scarlet Letter is probably Easy A, the one with Emma Stone. That's definitely the better Scarlet Letter film, in my opinion. But this is actually not so good. I mean, it's pretty boring, to be honest. Yeah, Demi Moore's okay, but even she didn't say wasn't good enough to say this one. You had Gary Oldman, Robin Duvall, but yeah, this movie's not so good. All right, film turning 40 this week. We got the horror classic Re-Animator. Of course, it's based on the H.P. Lovecraft story of the same name. Directed by Stuart Gordon, starring Jeffrey Combs as Herbert West, who's a medical student who has invented a regnant which can reanimate deceased bodies. Barbara Crampton is good in this one. It is very gruesome here. A really decent body horror type film. Well, I guess you could say more like a Frankenstein type film here too. It is a really cool one. Never really read the H.P. Lovecraft story. Can't comment on that. But yeah, this is a really cool one. Like, interesting practical effects here. I mean, it's well worth watch there. Also turning 40 is the forgettable Wild Geese 2. The sequel to 1978's Wild Geese. I mean, the first Wild Geese film, with Richard Burns, pretty good. But yeah, this actually isn't all that great. Of course, Richard Burns was originally going to reprise his role here, but sadly he passed away beforehand. Now this time is around where like a group of mercenaries are hired and to like spring Rudolph Hess from like a prison in Berlin. And again, it's not really that good of a sequel. I mean, the first film, with Richard Burns, much better, but the sequel just lacks originality. It just isn't all that good, and definitely one of the worst sequels there is. But that's pretty much it there. Let me let you guys, which of these films stand out to you the most? To me, the 10-year one is Going to Room, because that is actually literally my favorite film of that year. The 20-year one is going to, probably Domino. That's the better film on that list. The 30-year one is going to Jade, and the 40-year one is Re-Animator. Anyway, drop comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that bell for notification. This is Tim Signer.